just for like a week or so. And it's in this is probably what we're gonna do that other show with Mark Pesci. The next time I pull the cosmic trigger. So hopefully I can keep on getting, interesting guests every 23rd and do something weird and similar to Douglas Rushkoff.
Right.
But also to follow up with Douglas Rushkoff, because I was reading his fucking comic book, Adolf and Alistair, and it's crazy. And then I was listening to this old recording of him meeting Genesis Peoria. Anyways, he drives him from San Francisco to LA, and he gets like kicked out. This guy from Psychic TV gets kicked out of like the UK. He's like transformed himself as like an artist, and he's like and Douglas Rushkoff is like just gets finished writing Siberia, and Timothy Leary tells him to drive this guy down from Frisco to LA, and he's like, okay. And then so he records the trip, and it takes like 6-7 hours to drive. I don't know how long he recorded, but like I think he has like 3 hours that he's like gonna release or whatever. But anyways, I was listening to the first hour, and it was just like so surreal. Like that conversation, at least the beginning of it, the beginning of the interview in Adolf and Alistair, mixed with what we talked about on our show with the Cosmic Trigger. It's like these cycles of these fractal cycles of like progression, and like what Douglas and Genesis were talking about in like 1992 was like just before like the internet was going to come in, and Genesis was just talking about his own time, and he was talking about like the surrealists took the power away from like the elite in a sense, and they started to not care about like their images, like usually the art by like by people that had money, and so they could have like people who were talented to have time to do artwork, and then like the surrealists come around and kind of like just
Was this in the 1920s? Was this like Breton?
Not wealthy backgrounds started.
Was this in the 1920s? I think I know the surrealists from then, or rather that they were like they made a big splash in the 1920s, like with Salvador Dali. And
I guess like regular people keep on seeming to like take fire away from the gods, and having similar conversations about like what does this new medium mean, like culturally mean, even for like our physical space, especially now how like it's accelerating with VR and AR. Like this is the first time I went to my friend's house just before just after the Doug interview. I go to my friend's house and we take some mushrooms and we're hanging out, and usually when I present an idea of like what I'm doing, they usually just kind of like, okay, crazy Daniel, just like talking about his weird stuff again. And then when I start talking about the VR, they're just like all excited, and like they have a VR set, and like they were playing this maze game, and I was playing the maze game, and all I could think is like, oh, this fucking transition to this portal is not good. Like I could definitely do something better than that. And then I was just thinking like, okay, it looks nice, but it's like, where's the story? Why am I interested? Like, why am I here? Like, I don't get this besides like it looking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, so like, yeah.
Were you on mushrooms when you tried virtual reality for the first time?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I wasn't. I wouldn't waste my time. I wouldn't waste my time. I go in hyperspace naturally. I wouldn't waste my time with VR.
Yeah, VR is that'd be very interesting. Maybe a little risky to do psychedelics with VR. I could imagine the risk of derealization is fairly high. If you were to, I mean, they actually have.
see that
As trippy as it is, like you don't need any sort of substance, and VR it will definitely fool with your normal cognitive functions of what is real, what is not, where you are in space and time and stuff. It's really interesting.
I think it was an early
very powerful technology.
interview. There was I think it was maybe in that article, Last Days of Reality. No. This was way before that. I remember when Sega Genesis had the VR thing, and it was all in like black and like red, and it was like this like really weird VR experience. And I went to like Blockbuster and I tried it like as a little kid or whatever. And then after a while, like it's cool, but then after a while, when you take it off, you're like, oh, you're just orientated, and you're just like, okay, I'm not gonna really like spend a lot of time playing that game. Like it was fun, it was a cool experience, but like I'm not gonna like go back to that game again. And then like so later, when I hear Mark Pesce talk, and this is the guy that wrote a VR language, and he actually understood it when he took acid one time, and so that's his background. But he was talking about like the development of VR, and what they learned is that like the human body and mind and everything adjusts really well, and like if they spend enough time in the VR space, then they adjust to that type of like eye acuity and like motion and everything. And so then that's why they have like motion sickness, kind of like being what do you call it, seasickness, like they have like motion sickness, like
it's VR sickness.
It's like equilibrium is off because they got used. Yeah.
Well, shit. I guess we're live right now, eh?
I didn't was that for a while. They need to be able to like render in resolution. So
oh, hey, what's up, Curry? Are you getting feed from Satori? I can't hear you. I can't hear you as is. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, no. I think my connection.
Where are you right now, Satori?
Kevin's. No, I'm in LA. I'm back home.
Oh yeah, sweet, cool. Yeah. Man, it's been a while.
That was another like.
It's been a while.
No, that was like another interesting thing when I was like listening to their talk, like, so young Douglas Rushkoff goes and Timothy Leary tells him to go do something, and he does it, and then like he doesn't really realize what he's doing, right? And then like I find it funny that like in my own small thing, like I go from Florida to LA, only to like poetically wait for like Douglas Rushkoff to be on my step, me going through my own weird transformation. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see some like weird symmetry and like cosmic giggle in that. And it's like, oh yeah, I should have not used that phrase. So crazy, cool. Pulling the cosmic trigger. But sometimes you got to do it in moments like this. Rapid change. You just gotta pull every card you got.
This character, what's his name? Douglas Rushkoff. You guys started.
Yeah, Douglas Rushkoff. Yeah. Guy.
Or did you start Team Human with him? I remember a couple of years ago, or maybe it was a year that you had started that.
Yeah. No, we were doing this like weird mixtape thing, like us, and then like I talked to him about this, and we did like one mixtape, and it was just like it was cool. But no, he you know what was funny too is that I was remember this. He started Team Human podcast at the same time as like I was redoing an Imaginarium, and I remember like listening to his podcast just before I was thinking like, should I like keep on doing Imaginarium or like put it down? And then like I was like, I don't need to do Imaginarium. Like fucking just listen to Team Human. And then I started just like this is like a period where I just started like ripping audio and then like making all those things like all those like weird little beat tapes with like Douglas Rushkoff doing lectures and then like visuals. And I did that for a while and I was like, oh, this is all kind of what I want to do. Then I was like, oh, I should probably like make my own audio. And then I'm like, okay, now.
Yeah.
And I didn't even like really care what the subject was, but just like talk about whatever, and then I just build around that. So we were focused in the beginning, but then
Interesting. Well, how would you say? You know, as you know, I haven't been on for like 2 years. What has your time been like in the 2 years? You know, of since I was active, anyways, on the site. You know, what would you say has happened over the course of development for Minds itself? It looks like we lost him. I lost Satori. Is it? It's not my connection, is it? I hope it's not. Can you hear me? Okay.
no, I think it's my connection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can hear you good.
I was
So
gonna
like,
ask
if I
you.
just cut out, just you and Curry just talk, I guess.
Well, I was gonna ask you because I haven't been active for 2 years on the site, as you know,
Can hear you.
and so I was wondering. So what? Let's catch up. What has your
Mhm.
time been like? It's been 2 years. How has Minds developed in this time? Like, what do you think has been like the big push, if there is any, or any particular happenings? I remember Gatherings was introduced when you know, the last time I was on, Gatherings was introduced, and we're doing a lot of that over at the Minds Poetry Group.
When you started the open mic or well,
Yeah, I'm thinking about
yeah.
doing that again. You know, I think that would be fun. But yeah, it seems like there's been a site redesign, and I know Minds Plus has like been the latest push, I guess, as far as like getting this monetization idea going. Or have you been like really involved with that at all?
So a couple months ago, I was talking to Bill. Like during that time, so after open mic kind of like dispels, me and Rose were doing kind of like our own little like poetic thing, and then everybody kind of does their own thing, and so I started doing my own thing too, and like I go spend more time on like Hive or I think before that too it was like Steam, and then like there was drama over there, and they forked and Steam turned into Hive, and then so I'm just messing.
What's up, Curry?
Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
man.
Cool. I'm in action.
Wait, are you guys
I'm
getting
good.
too much? Are you guys getting feedback from me from my speakers at
No,
all?
you're coming in clear, but Satori's cutting in and out.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'm cutting it now.
It's cool. Where are you right now, Mac? Apartment in Toronto?
Yeah, Yep, I'm in a new apartment with my
Yeah, I
partner.
keep on coming in and out. But I was
Ooh.
just saying, like, I've been in and out of mines as well, like, not consistent with, like, how I use it. I was even, shit, we did a pandemic show. Remember you kind of came back for, like, a minute, and we talked to you during the pandemic,
Yeah.
but me, Meg, and Nicole did like a COVID weird show, and I didn't even like put it on Minds, I think, and I put it like on this like weird experimental video streaming thing off of like the Hive blockchain.
Yeah.
Anyways, I've been just like messing around with other little alternative sites and like how they see to monetize media, I guess, digital media. So I
Yeah.
go and I play on those things and I just see how they work. And then, at the same time, I'm playing on them, but I'm also developing my own style. Like that blog that I posted, that was written over on Hive, of me just kind of like messing around with, how I like to put everything together. And so,
Yeah.
I did that one there. I have a lot of different weird collages mixed with poetry. I did like a whole like year of doing that. Just getting really crazy with it. I have this whole like weird series of William S. Burroughs, which I think is going to be handy later for the vapor tests because he's going to be the first room. Like I figured out the whole game actually right after I took mushrooms. Like it all came to me about like how to do the whole vapor test. So the vapor test is kind of initially first designed because Minds Gaming was saying that the VR space that he has is based off of an escape room. And so when he said that, I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. We turn this into like a mystery game. And then like, you figure out like clues or whatever. And then you get to the next room. Then I was just thinking about like how that would be. And then like tie this all together. Like, how does that work? And so like, I didn't really have a good idea until later. I go, okay, we'll have 23 different rooms and each room is like a different mind, like a counterculture like mind. And I'm going to start with William S. Burroughs. And then like, cause like the cut up method and like actually William S. Burroughs and Brian Geisen does this movie early on and it's called Cut Ups and they like just cut the shit out of like they film a movie and they cut it up and like they even mess with the audio and it's like all sorts of weird. And like the first time they showed it, like no one's done something like this. And like people leave the movie theater throwing up. Ugh, they're just like throwing up because like there's no frame of reference. It's all like disorientated, like, and they're just like freaking out. Like if that's probably like how people experience your film, Mac. I didn't throw up, but I did feel uncomfortable watching it, and I do like weird things.
Somebody commented, they're like, "Oh, this is really great. I'm gonna watch it." And every time somebody comments that, like, they're usually just such like a baby face of like such an innocent user. They seem like they've never done anything wrong in their life. And when they watch, it's just in my mind, they watch 5 minutes and they're like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And that's I never hear back from them ever. I don't even see them on the site. Again. That's happened quite often.
They just abandoned. There's probably a flow chart in the back end of a Mac and the correlation of like Minds is probably up to like 1,000 Minds users just like quit Minds because they watched Mac's film. Just like no, just like, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
People have a certain impression of me, which is, always people project whatever they want onto you, and they'll do that to anybody, and you do that to other people, and that film is just so dark and like schizophrenic and brutal and just ambitious, and it just registers as like really like postmodern and pretend, all this kind of stuff. And I think I'm still really proud of it, like what I accomplished, and it's like really meaningful to me. But what I'm planning to do is to buy a good microphone and to record another version, a quote unquote ASMR version that's soft and pleasant and isn't cut up and is done in one take. Just conceptually, it's completely different. Taking the same material, doing a completely different delivery system for it. And I've already done a test of this, and it really is interesting because it ends up being this feminine version compared to this very masculine, brutal. And the reason why it's feminine is, first of all, this ASMR version is completely audio. So the experience is like you're in a womb. You know, you should play it. I was imagining it being played when you're laying down at bed in the dark and you've got an hour to yourself before you go to sleep and you're playing this. And it's very gentle sounds. It's very, you know, it's not trying to like, you know, the first one I did it, I was thinking, oh man, poetry is boring. I got to make it exciting. I got to like interrupt their experience at any given time. Part of that was just my inexperience, but it was also this like transcendent function I was focused on in really wanting to go beyond myself. So it's completely naive. It's very visual. It's like violent. It feels like invasive and like violent in some ways. And the text isn't it isn't necessarily that. I think when people read the text itself without like, you know, the performance is like a whole nother architecture of decisions on top of the text. The text itself is not that.
Well,
maybe it is to some degree in which I pulled it out, but
I know at least what it was.
The text also can be very gentle. When you have those two in mind of what the text actually is, in my mind, what was happening is they're synthesized together as this masculine and feminine counterpart to myself, and then creating something really three-dimensional when you then reapproach the text. Right now, I don't think people can get through and I honestly don't blame them. They can't get through that hour. They cannot get through an hour of that, you know, that vibe. It's like, why would I ruin my night? That's how much it's like. What's that?
What was that?
I said I've seen it twice and I still like it.
Man, I still remember when you first saw it and you scribbled your impressions. Man, that was so cool, dude. I love that. I still think about that. Yeah, so that's one of the projects I got on the back burner is to do a better version so people can actually appreciate that project for what it did.
You know, okay, so I think, you know, let's get down to the near future, and also too, I guess what I want to talk.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
okay, with the VR and all that kind of stuff is cool, but on the back end, what's cool about like what I'm thinking is because we're gonna do all this work for the VR experience, and you know, but at first we have to just get the layout, the regular layout, and we're doing it right now. And I was actually looking at code last night, and I was just like remembering back in high school when I was doing fucking coding, and so I was like, I gotta learn enough to know how to like manipulate the display as I want it. So right now we have just messing around with 3D images, but we already could you know, play video, but it looks kind of weird because it's not 3D film video, it's regular video. And so what I'm thinking is designing, you know, a theater for like Imaginarium stuff, and then like a console for Minds Gaming stuff. So like, you know, if you're watching a Minds Gaming stuff in the VR experience, you go into like an arcade, and then you get it to a console, and you find the console that you want to watch, and then you watch this video, and then you kind of like, and then it's embedded in the 3D atmosphere that you have, and then, so you're on a console watching a Minds Gaming video. And so the vice versa, if you're watching an Imaginarium video, you're going to go and watch an Imaginarium video, but then it's like a theater, and you walk into a theater, and then you scroll and say, okay, I got to watch this one, and then it kind of like, you know, when a theater happens and the like darkness kind of comes in, like the lights kind of go, and then it's okay, and then the screen widens, and then you're going to watch Imaginarium video like that. So we've been messing around with different backends on how to do that, but we found some pretty good ones that display stuff pretty good. And you know, this is all to say that like I view after this phase, it is, you know, everybody who wants to like help and get involved, like later on, I want this like continue. So like I'm thinking already about breaking the old format of podcasts and even video in that sense, and moving to a VR experience, but also to um, all that work and everything in that space to have its own like portal in there. So like I've been viewing, like there was this whole thing about Mind's movie, and I wasn't even paying attention, and censorship sucks like tags me in the discussion of this thread and says if this thing ever gets off its feet, Satori D should be at the heart of it. And I kind of just like laugh and I'm like whatever. And then I'm like looking at this group, and like it says Mind's movie, but like no one's using it to like actually develop a movie or like using the group right. And so like this for me, like culturally, the Mind's culture that I've been like trying to cultivate for like 5 years, like goes against like everything I believe. So I just go and like I'm going to use this group properly and pitch an idea for a Mind's movie, and I kind of have this half-baked idea that I said about the Mind's underground, which is like a phrase I've been using for like 3 years now. But anyways, and then like people start talking, and then I was just like one day, because I had to defend myself against Douglas Rushkoff against Minds, and so like then I thought, oh, where does that come from? And then I started talking about like me nostalgically holding on to that moment, and then I was like, okay, then let me throw some threads into there, and then I'm like, okay, that's like the start of the Minds Underground, and I post that up, and then like some people were like, this one guy has been really kind of crazy about that, and it's just like kind of interesting in that sense, like, okay, I have all this like video and audio from like that period. It's like, okay, like let me try to organize it and put that out there, but like it's also to like, okay, now it's time to move further from that. And this is a way too I view like the Imaginarium VR place too. Has like a museum of Imaginarium, and there's different eras of Imaginarium. Like there's the 24-hour Dale Imaginarium. Then it's like the which is like what I call the Core 3 Imaginarium, which is like me and Meg, and then like a rotating circle of like someone that comes in and like spends like a year kind of like developing something, and then like they go and do something else, and then like that's been like our path. But that's all to say that like we keep that and we put that in like this virtual like museum, and then like anybody could engage with that material there, and it's like better organized, and it's just like, well, there's like an archive, but there's like a museum, and then you can highlight whatever you think is important, and you can shift it, and we could probably even write an AI algorithm that like does advanced randomizing of it or whatever. Like there's all sorts of things we could do with it. Anyways, but that's all to say that like once we have these spaces, like I view having a venue, because I was like walking back from the DMV back to my house, and like I was seeing like everything's like closing, and I'm thinking, oh, it'd be cool to have a studio space. Like this would be fun. Like I wish like this one would like if I had money, I would buy this one and this one, and I would use it like this. Then I was like, oh, I kind of have a VR space. Like, okay, let's imagine the near future. And then I'm like, okay, like, what about if we have a venue and it's like the resident of that venue this month to highlight an artist is going to be Mac. Mac, you have a VR space, and we help you on the back end design it, but you fill it with your work, and then we teach you how to like manipulate the space. And maybe Curry Hubble, like, he likes your movie, and he goes out there and he starts drawing on the VR wall, and then we start get the ball rolling. And now by the month's over, you have your own unique VR space, and then you can keep on branching that out into like whatever you want to do. Maybe at first we just like display your work up until that point really nice. Like you have a bookshelf and it has all your writings, and you could go and someone can interact with that. Or then you have all your movies and your spoken word in another like console or TV or computer screen or whatever it is you want to make it. And we start like developing that. And so, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So that is definitely the future for sure. I think being social VR is particularly engaging and compelling, and it's great to watch movies together with people. Right now the technology, it doesn't feel very good for The more that you use VR, the more that you kind of get used to, like, for instance, like how much it hurts on your face, like after a half hour or an hour. You know, it's like it's really strapped on when you start sweating and everything like that. It's not like the best. But like I have an Oculus Quest 2, and I've been playing it, using it for about like 3 months now, and I can be in VR for 2 hours, no sweat, and I'm not like weirded out when I take off my goggles anymore. I'm not like, you know, but before, when I would use it a lot, like I would literally be thinking like, what is my life coming to, that I'm in this virtual environment consuming things, and you know, what does this mean for reality? But it then quickly your mind adapts to it, and you quickly get into this place where it's normal, and maybe not necessarily magical or anything like that. But you are correct that that is where we're going as far as making these social organizations and like events. Like if we could do, say, event and like an art event, sort of like the poetry gatherings, or you know, any sort of gatherings that you like, where you know 6 people are presenting in virtual reality something, and everybody comes and shares space and shares, like, as an audience, this thing, and everybody talks afterwards. You can do that all over the world, what you would be doing in your local city. Query's out, or Satori's out again. But that is the future. I think what's going to happen is you're going to have these big. The thing about virtual reality is it doesn't really work when it's janky. It sucks when it's janky. What you need is like a polished, like, corporation to make these experiences, which is kind of like, it's a shitty dynamic. But Facebook is probably going to get all the users again to be in this. These digital environments, because they'll also have the tools ready to, like, for consumers, for people who are just creative, who don't want to learn code or anything like that. They can still create environments really quickly and have them be awesome and gorgeous, invite people in, and it is that customized idea. And that is probably going to, that favors the corporations, because it's just so much harder to make something that's actually comfortable and that everybody will buy into in order to even share these social experiences. So it's stacked in the corporation's favor there. So I feel like it's this weird thing where it's the avant-garde, but it's definitely not underground. You know, where Facebook is leading as far as like interesting things going on, interesting and useful things going on in the VR space, but it's Facebook, it's this corporation. But it's like the cheapest point of entry, you know, which is huge for accessibility. And the products are generally compelling and smooth and stuff like that. And yeah, that's going to be a very interesting dynamic to watch, because VR is different than social media. Social media is so flat, it's so like this card-based kind of thing, and you try to find ways to get out of it, whether doing podcasts together or gatherings, video conferences, the video games. VR does stand to really make internet culture a very dynamic and very tangible place. Like we would be having a different conversation if we weren't saying, oh, we're going to live cast this, we're doing a, you know, this thing. If all 3 of us were just like, let's meet in VR, we'd have a completely different conversation.
Like, you know, that's what I'm saying.
It would more so reflect reality of what it would be like if the 3 of us actually physically got together.
This is,
if we meet in VR, I'm doing karate on both of you guys first thing.
You better. You know, there's a weird Black Mirror of like this video game VR and then or whatever. But anyways, what I'm saying is too, is like what you were saying about like the VR experience and stuff that I caught earlier. For me, I flip it in my head. It's like this thing is here, but this is just another like weird little cultural lesson we're learning to get back to ourselves, because like I'm viewing this as like a magic spell, so that we turn the VR space into actual physical space, and we're going to have physical spaces, and then this is just for us later how we mold or protect ourselves from AR, because that's coming as well. And so like either we're going to be controlled consuming other people's VR experiences and AR experiences, or at least we're going to be enabled to play with them and flip them when we don't like someone else's narrative that they're forcing us to get down on a VR or AR level. You know what I mean? Like we could do that with text, with audio, with media. I know how to do all of that. I know how to break up anybody's like narrative, even in my own head, or physically and or digitally. But I don't have the knowledge or the tools to do that with like VR in a sense. Right. And so like that becomes something, as I think even someone just living in a time and space now, interesting to be able to, because I think it all like leads us to coming back to like after this whole like weird like a COVID fog comes out. Like I think like I told with Bill, like on the other side of like COVID, like people are going to be starving for like, you know, gathering in physical space, and like that's a good like leveraging point to like get us like out of this thing. But like we're still going to need to combat ourselves with like even more aggressive marketing and even more aggressive weird narratives that are not conducive to what we like of open source, organic, or whatever term you want to put on that.
Yeah, it seems like one of the potentials is that it's going to be like code switching, in which there's multiple levels to the internet. There's like a mainstream internet where it's very censorship heavy. It's very safe. It's like for kids and for adults who can handle a little spice, a little a little more questionable content, who can handle a little bit more jank in terms of technology. They're going to be on the so-called dark web, the alternative web, what Minds is. And for people like us, if VR becomes this and is going to be like this corporate consumptive kind of thing where the barrier to entry to create is actually pretty high, to create anything is high, and everybody is more so like it just my experience with the VR stuff is that it really does render you into this consuming trance. You just want to consume on it, whether it's you're consuming video or you're consuming video games, you're consuming quote unquote experiences, and the interaction is very much within these systems like video games or etc. And social stuff seems best when it's in that framework. Like for instance, playing Population 1, and you're within a team of like 2 other people, and you can have some amazing social experiences with those 2 people fighting against like 18 other people. When you have a social experience where it's like, oh, this is a chat bot, then you get into a place where there's not a whole lot that you're working towards doing together. So it's very shallow, or it can feel very shallow as an interaction. So I don't know. What I was going is that I can imagine us saying like, oh, let's hop on after this conference. Us 3, let's hop on VR, and we could be together within like 5 minutes in a physical space, and like having that kind of medium shift would be really cool for the 3 of us, or for any kind of project that we're trying to build between the 3 of us, for instance, streaming, whatever. Like code switching between like one set of language to another. We're probably going to code switch from something like Minds to something like Facebook VR to something like this alt Minds organization type thing.
That's a weird little thing of like that code switching, but that's how you so how memes and things get going is that there is a new novelty. There's something strange. Like you just have to look, and it's in that moment you're susceptible to the infection of whatever idea it is, and so that's why like this is the whole thing about Adolf and Alistair is the reason Hitler becomes to power is because he knows how to use the radio better than anybody else, and he just like drowns the whole society in this omnipresent orator, just like ramping, like all the time, just like coming from the heavens into the room and telling them what reality is, and they just say, okay, I guess that's what reality is. And this kind of happens with every medium, and this is what you're saying is right now everybody's just enamored with just like consuming because it's all encompassing. And like what, when Minds Gaming was messing around with the layout for the 360 one, his girlfriend looks over and says, "Oh, what are you doing?" He's, "Oh, I'm just like trying to learn A-frame and blah blah blah." And she's just like, "It looks like you're playing the game." "Oh yeah, that's just a layout." And then she's like, "Can I see it?" And he was like, "It's nothing really." And she's like, "No, I want to see it. It looks cool." But like it's that novelty of the 360 and like there's something different and something weird.
Yeah.
And like, but that's where I think the leverage point is of like not only the code switching, but then like embedding it with like things of substance, with things with depth, and these weirder concepts and these weirder things that we can experience when we have our full attention immersed into something. And just the spectacle, but examine ourselves or something.
I'm looking at Curry's scribbles right here and saying VR to the spectrum of open source to closed source, and closed source would be Facebook, and then what would be an open source VR? And what that got me thinking was, the VR is phenomenology. It's experience itself. It's computing on like the base medium of existence of everything, which is experience, which is what makes it such an interesting medium. It's literally the medium to end all mediums, because any other program or any other experience sits on top of VR. And what's really interesting about our minds, about phenomenality, is that it's closed source. We can't see it. We can't look into it, and we can't fuck around with the internals. You can look into the brain and you can poke around, but God is basically, he closed it off to us. We might be able to hack we might be able to hack into it, but we can't really see really what's going on in there. So and the thing
we don't have the right code.
Hold on. There's a philosophical
guys, I can read the code. It just takes a long time.
There's a philosophical concept here called naive realism. It's the fact that your experience, you can't see your brain generating it. It's just not phenomenally available to you how phenomenality is being created, because there's a limited amount of resources that your brain has. And if you're trying to run away from a lion, the information that's not relevant, like how are we building this lion so that we're representing it, and what's the actual nature of reality, that kind of information is not useful to you. So that's why the brain doesn't really devote resources to telling you, oh, by the way, what you feel is given is actually a virtual reality. Your brain is just creating it to be good enough. So it's interesting that just philosophically, at the point of the medium, it's closed. There's a point where there's a diminishing returns to an open source, fully, quote unquote, fully transparent framework. Like, what would even be fully transparent? The closest we get is an impression when we're dreaming, and we're like, oh, we're dreaming, and it's like this lucid, and then it feels like fully transparent of like what is actually, how things are being built and everything like that. But it's really just a fleeting impression to begin with.
So this is like some weird fucking play that we're playing here of like us remembering, like the Hindu creation myth of like once there was only one consciousness, and then it got split into two, and then it just pretended that it was two different consciousness, and it got bored, so it split into four and split into 8, and kept on doing that, and then it forgot that it was different consciousness that got split. and then until it renders into every possibility that we have now.
Interesting.
And then so like on the smallest scale, we're doing the same thing. And I was writing these weird little lines, and it kind of goes into like this weird phase that I'm messing with. And I think it goes to what you're saying is we don't make TV, we watch TV. Break open the screen, and I think this goes back to what Curry's, kind of like quintessential animation that, like for me, later what I remix and like encapsulates a certain period of minds. We're like trying to break that screen, I think, in some like poetic, metaphorical sense. And it's like, and this later thing of like, if you're not program or reprogram, because in the last days of reality, like that's the last command that we have. And it's like we're open source, like we're messing around with the nature of like perception in a really fundamental way of like rendering it almost indistinguishable, right? We're getting to that point, and then to where we could project onto with the AR. But that's all later to nanotechnology, to where later we're going to be able to actually maybe program reality in a sense. And so then like right now, when we're talking about open source like reality, of like that just means that like everybody has equal footing to the control panel that to devote your time, then you can learn code. And then so right now I think our creation is perception, like this is what like everybody's been like playing with, but like in a sense that like now we're creating perception itself in a sense of like a really good VR experience. I remember when we were talking a little bit with Near Miss, she was giving this weird example of like,
Did we lose Satori?
uh, uh, a mechanic. You could hear me, but
I lost you there for a while.
Yeah, we didn't get the near miss example.
Satori, are you there? Hey, Mac, what's up, buddy?
Dude, I'm having a great time. How are you, man?
I'm having fun too. It's funny that it glitched out there because there's a flow happening amongst
Yeah,
us.
and break the screen.
Right? Oh, he
Break
broke
the
the
screen.
screen.
Throw it out.
It's too powerful. Wow.
So I say like, what about if we create in 3 years reimagine reincarnations and mechanics of reincarnation? So now it's a VR experience. So now the person could be experience it from your perspective of reading it, and like they're feeling all of your emotions from your perspective, and they're doing it from there.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
The marriage of feminine and the masculine together into one holistic experience.
When I was making that movie and I was immersed in it, and I would smoke some weed and I would take a walk and I would think. And one of the mind-blowing experiences that I had was imagining just that. Yes, if it was a virtual reality, if I could build it as this kind of virtual, symphonic, poetic experience. Yeah, one day. I don't know. I justified my VR purchase by saying, "Oh man, this is a brand new medium. This has a lot of metaphorical power for me, a lot of philosophical interest. In what ways ideology VR, for instance, stuff like that. And then I got it, and I actually don't. Now that I've had it, I don't resonate as much. It's sort of like imagining it is better than actually experiencing it. And once it's normalized, I'll have to do some more thinking on it. But there's a difference now that it's normalized for me. That's this normal mundane.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime I can just throw it on and have this kind of computing experience is Yeah, it wouldn't blow my mind to now think of making a mechanics of reincarnation in VR anymore. But I was going to say that Minds is ultimately, and social media is ultimately a different beast than virtual reality. I mean, you can't really think of how Minds would morph into like a virtual reality experience. Like it just
no.
would.
Oh, I could imagine that.
Oh, you can. Okay, yeah, sure.
It would probably be a bit like, yeah, go on.
I was gonna say, like, when me and Minds Gaming are talking about like what we could kind of do right now in the near future,
yeah,
it's like we have this weird little game, and then like so at the end of the vapor test is that you lead back to like mine, and like there's like a little like portal back, and then boop,
yeah.
you're back into mine, and then you went through this 360
Now I'm thinking
little
if
game
Minds
escape room, and then now you're back in this.
if Minds was VR, it would be like a Web3 thing where it's like built via capital generated from cryptocurrencies to like create these like fantastical applications that are like connected into these virtual economies on the blockchain.
Well,
probably.
What I've been imagining
that's like
is
yeah.
If each of us is represented by like an orb in an empty space,
Yeah.
then like a post could be represented like could be represented sonically as like a little bird chirp or like a little wisp of grass, and then we can like choose to link into that in like a very three-dimensional way.
Amazing.
Something like that. You can start thinking about it in terms of like sound, because I don't think virtual reality is about like achieving the fidelity of reality. Like, why bother?
Right.
But achieving a crossing of channels, mixing the dimensions in ways that we don't usually get to mix them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
So,
and the pleasure that comes across from that, it's like, trying to create that sense of awe and wonder of saying, oh, I have some posts that are glowing, that are this like thing that I can then touch and manipulate and then like pull apart and put my head in to see what this post is and what this world is.
Yeah.
Like that.
Or
like I can say, where's my Minds network? And I could analyze the Minds network in this three-dimensional network in virtual reality and see how people are actually connected and what they're, what they're actually doing. What's the shape of the site? That's not just the timeline, which is like this flat linear thing, but it's kind of like pulsing and growing and complex network that we're all in.
I just had this idea that if it was mapped geometrically, but like in a hyperbolic way, you could actually tell geographically, like you could tap into an area where you can tell geographically where people are. And then you can say like, well, hey, there's a cluster of people on VR here. Let's go to the park. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to link up in physical space.
Mm.
Mac, this was know where you were talking about like linking the network in a more like meaningful way or in a more interesting way or whatever. When I was like in the beginning of the poetry group, like I went back to go like map out the beginning, right? And then as I was doing that, like I started to see like these different streams and like, these different ebb and flows, like these different clusters of people like posting, like there were certain like subgroups like within like the poetry group, and there were different like phases, and like people like one person will maybe like do something kind of like somber, and then everything else would like be like shades of that, and then like what I mean, like there was an interesting experience when I went all the way down and just literally was just like categorizing the posts just by chronologically, and then but as I was like sit there and do it, like I could see different things of like how the titles were, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that seems kind of interesting, and I'll read it a little bit, and then I'm like, then I could see it, and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is kind of interesting, and you start to see like this like more rhythm to it than just a line, and I think this goes to what Curry is saying, And one of my favorite sayings is that consciousness is more than computation. It's music. Like it's more like music. It's more like this like different thing than computation. Because this is kind of like going past the binary. Binary collapses into two different things, but then like this is like the wave. This is the different like. The vapor, the things that are just ethereal. And when Curry was talking about moving and forming things with sound, it's just like, oh, we're learning the lessons of a peyote ceremony, ayahuasca ceremony, because that's what they teach you. They said the spirits tell us.
Yeah.
Mac, did you lose Satori?
I did.
He completed his thought perfectly, though.
Yes, he did. Vapor, and then he left like vapor.
Yeah, and like VR being a form of psychedelic.
Yeah, VR definitely is a form of. They already have psychedelic apps on there that selling themselves as meditation apps. And what they'll do is they'll have an effect that you're supposed to follow with your breath, of like this particle effect that comes out of your breath when you exhale, and then it like comes in when you're supposed to inhale. And then as you like get trained on this, then they give you all sorts of visuals.
Like fractals or what?
Yeah, shoot you through tunnels and stuff like that.
Nice.
And
that sounds therapeutic.
Yeah, it can be good, except it like the technology, I'd say in 5 years, because the technology has to get more comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not as therapeutic when it's like, oh, this is burning my forehead.
Yeah, you could also just do that with your own mind, right? Like that's almost basic meditation stuff right there. But like you'll see visuals if you do yoga in the right way, or if you go look at the sun with your eyes closed, you'll see some.
Yeah.
So I wonder how far. It's cool that we're exploring the space, though. It teaches us about our mind.
Yes, and virtual reality is very fertile for that, of teaching us about. I mean, they're discovering things about their mind. You can have out-of-body experiences with yourself. They do these science experiments where they have a camera set up behind you. You got a VR goggles, and then you're literally looking at yourself from behind. They're creating or recreating an out-of-body experience where you can lift up your hand and you see yourself in front of you. Lift up your hand, and yeah, I mean, who knows where all that stuff can go. So
I wonder what kind of effects that would have.
What's that?
I wonder what kind of effects that has on somebody's perception after they've gone through that experiment.
Yeah. There's stuff like where you could have a man and a woman switch perspectives, so that the man is now a woman looking at himself as a man or something like that. Yeah, like you can really create empathy in those kind of like very like tangible way of like
putting them in the other person's shoes. I mean, that's also what's powerful about like literature for me. Like that's why I still read, is like, because when I read, I feel like most of the times when it's good, I'm inside that person's head. And you had that same experience with good literature.
Yeah, man, I'm one of the reasons why I came back to Minds. I was writing this down before I came here, but I came back to Minds. I had this impulse as soon as Biden won to come back to Minds.
Good call. Something changed.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but maybe it's because I think Minds was a particular thing or had a particular reputation in the Trump era, and now we're in a new era where this kind of counterculture, kind of anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian vibe has a different tone now that Biden is president. Somebody might, look at if you're critical of the mainstream media in the Trump era, I think most people would say, "Oh, you're a Trump supporter," or if I give into that, we increase the chances of Trump winning, or something like that. I a lot of progressives.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
now people are and now people are really tired. Think of somebody who had never ever once dissented against this mainstream narrative, this establishment narrative in the Trump years. I mean, if I was getting sick of it like year one, I think there's a lot of exhaustion and a lot of relief, and what I think is that there's sort of like how the crypto markets are on a bull run.
Yeah.
And as soon as Trump lost, Bitcoin started really gaining traction, and I feel like these kind of alt sites, it might be like this. These two forces are actually going to come together, which is Minds is positioned to take advantage of this cultural dissent and this financial dissent synthesized into a new push somewhere, a new culture. Somewhere.
What was the signal to me for my return back to Minds as well? Because I was a little bit off Minds for a minute, and I watched this commercial on PayPal. You're going to be able to buy crypto, buy it and trade it and sell it via your PayPal. I'm like, holy shit, they're fucking making lowering this bar way too low. I was like, okay, let me see what Minds is doing. I messaged Bill, and I'm like, hey, what are you up to? It's like, I think it's time for us to like sit down and talk. And you're down to come into Infinite Imaginarium. He's like, yeah, when? It's like, how about tomorrow? He's like, yeah. So then I go and like talk to him, and then what's coming up next, what you're talking about, what's going on really with Minds. I'm just talking about what's me and Minds Gaming is cooking up. It's not really Minds, it's like our own little project. But anyways, Minds is going to be rolling out, which is what you're talking about. Like, this is serious back income things that's going to be fucking big. And I didn't know it at the time until I talked to Bill. And that's why I talked to Bill.
So they have been working on something big. So my criticism of Minds before had been seen like they kept on changing around these UI elements, like really doing a lot of like front end changes and revamps. Like
I have lost so much media constantly because of all these changes. But that's a story for another time.
There wasn't like a lot of work. Like a lot of the bugs weren't getting fixed, or like things were breaking all the time. Like blogs are broken so much worse than they were when I was last active on here. It's really frustrating to me. It's very frustrating that I spent 10 tokens on these blog posts. I spent like probably like 30 or 40 tokens on like these series of blog posts that nobody could read, and I had no idea whatsoever. And the text appears to me, and it doesn't appear to anybody else.
Until I told you.
Yeah, really sucks. It would be exciting. It'd be exciting if they're working on something big on the back end. But I was thinking, what do you guys think of this? Let me bounce this off of you. The problem that Minds needs to solve, or that the problem that we're all trying to solve, is how does crypto networks relate to social networks? In what way do they relate?
This is
emotionally, psychologically, practically, functionally. How do they synthesize? How do they relate? And I feel like something is there, because you can think of these cryptocurrencies as networks, as basically social networks. And that gives you some sort of insight of what this new technology is with the social media, that they're networks as well, that the value of a site like Minds is sort of like the value of an altcoin, like Ethereum compared to the Bitcoin of Facebook or something like that, or like the value of ADA, like Cardano's coin compared to Bitcoin. If Facebook is the Bitcoin of the social media world, you can start making all these kind of metaphors relating the two, and hopefully coming
US dollars of the crypto market.
Yeah. Maybe Facebook is the US dollar, or is it like
Yeah, I think so.
Normal social life.
That's more
the US dollar.
Well, this is an interesting thing. Minds Gaming told me he mentioned the show called Uploaded, and what's kind of interesting about that show Uploaded is real quick, like the guy has died and he's uploaded to a VR afterlife space. But anyways, they make all these jokes, like it's like in 2080 something or whatever, and so they make all these jokes to the present, and so they're in a hacker space, and they wanted like this like add-on or patch so they could do something. And anyways, they have to play in Facebook Libra or whatever the cryptocurrency Facebook is developing. And it was just kind of funny. Like I get the joke because like they're talking about Facebook is still around and like controlling stuff, and like the biggest jokes there are like all the corporations won and like everybody's living in this kind of like ad space era. Uh, but I think it's more like what Curry is saying that's the U.S. dollar compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum. But at the same time, what is important, what's happening with mines, and the difference. Why I was messing around with Steam and Hive in this period of what you were saying, where why am I going to spend so much time posting work that like no one's going to hear or no one cares about? They're all care about their Trump memes or whatever. And so I start working, figuring out other blockchain because what's cool about Steam, they have an actual fucking blockchain, and everything's all the apps are built on that. There's restrictions with that because of scaling issues and all this kind of stuff, but they have these really cool mechanisms that were designed but played in real time, and what are the ramifications of this. And so like it created like this hierarchy. The first adopters got all the coins, and then they had the pools, and they kind of ruled the site with an iron fist. Like you couldn't get anywhere if you didn't get blessed by someone in Steam that had a big pool of these tokens, and then because their voting weighed a lot, and then so like versus like you get $1 worth this person's versus like a penny or a half a penny by someone else's. Like so it creates this whole stratosphere of like the circle of elite content and curators, and then everybody else in their orbit. And then if you get blessed, then you make money off of it. But I didn't really care. I was just accumulating coins and then like playing them on the stock market. But I always knew that I was going to. I mean, on the different markets, and I always knew that I was going to store my value in Ethereum because I kind of believe, there's like a blue chip crypto and is going to be around, and that's a better bet of the long-term value of it. And I don't really care about the value of Hive. I just care about it fluctuating and then converting it back to Ethereum and then converting it back when it makes sense. And so like I do that for that year, and I turn like the 200 Steam dollars that I had to 1,400 when the last time I traded. So I learned that. But now what comes down to Mines is we're going to have Uniswap integrated into Mines. And Uniswap is now the market in which we could trade Mines token for any other Ethereum-backed token, RC20 RC20 token. Anyways, so that's what creates the economic engine on the back end of what you were talking about. And on the front end, the other big thing that they're working on is Matrix, which is a way for people to interact in a way better way. So it's, from what Minds Gaming is telling me, it's like Discord or Slack for anybody who's used those kind of things. It's like that, where you can message people, then you can hop into like a group chat, or you could even do video or audio like conferencing, and that's what Messenger and groups functionalities are going to have. And then you can share documents, you can send files. So it's this whole other more way to engage, because for the longest time, me and the Imaginarium, we use Slack because you cannot fucking share or even work in any functioning way using Minds. Is like really hard. I mean, later when you get the kind of better group chat under the post, then you could do stuff there. But I mean, yeah, we got to use other things. But so the Matrix is going to be better. They're supposedly always overhauling blogs, but I think that was a function of them not getting the Minds Plus blog function right. Like Minds Gaming, I knew he'll know what exactly was the issue because he's on top of that stuff.
So wait a minute. So you're telling me that there's going to introduce a marketplace where you can swap Minds tokens for other Ethereum tokens, Ethereum based ERC 20.
Yeah, any token. You can make your own token if you wanted to, but you can change it for Ethereum. But what the interesting is that they have liquidity pools, and that's what so different about.
People are going to have more Minds tokens in general, or will they be more stingy with the Minds tokens? Because it's like, yeah, but I can swap it for other stuff. I have money.
I don't know. It all depends how the markets go. But what's cool about Uniswap, they decentralize their marketplace. So what happens on other token based?
I think I get it. Because if you introduce, if they basically have a scheme where Minds tokens becomes a little bit more valuable, in which people really want them, they want to earn them, the incentive is stronger to create quote unquote good to drive the content on Minds. I just listened to Jim Rutt and Ottman talk, and that's the kind of language he was using of like providing incentive to get people to provide good content to the site. The problem is, it seems like it's going to be the problem
doesn't work like that.
Gaming the Minds tokens system in order to where you're basically like calibrating yourself to maximize tokens doesn't mean you're creating good blog content.
It doesn't even matter. That doesn't matter. Oh. Because what matters is having forward vision and putting your Minds tokens as liquidity pools. And so now you have liquidity pools in the market. Now, whatever happens on this market is whatever happens on the market, but you're investing and you're having real estate in the market, so you're now getting a steady return on your Minds tokens. That's really how you make your Minds tokens work for you, not playing these schemes of content. Create whatever you want to create. But on the back end, we're going to be smart about how we get our state of real estate on the digital landscape. We're going to have economic tools. We're going to have an area which is ours, and all this kind of stuff. And then so now we're thinking how we use this. I've been saying this to Megan. Now I'll say it right now. Is like me and Minds Gaming teaming up. We're like a creative cartel now. I was working on content and the front end, and he was working on distribution and the back end. And when I meet up with him and I talk to him what I'm doing, and he says what he's doing, he's like, "Oh, I got a thing where you can make a cloud." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then I look at what he's doing. I'm like, "Oh, I got a lot of assets, media and images that you could use to make this thing look cooler." And then that's like what we've been doing right now. Just like, okay, he's like, "Oh, I've been playing with this," and then I go in there and like, okay, like we got to do it like this way, and we got to do it like that way. And so in that sense, like it's. I feel it like differently. And I've even been talking to Corey, and Corey knows more than I do because I guess he's like brokering this like deal between them. I don't know if that's true or not, so like don't quote me on this. But he's been telling me codedly, like I wish I could tell you everything I know, but I can't do it until it's public. But just the last time I talked to him, he says I'm having a ambitious strategy for Imaginarium. He says I had to go and talk to two of my friends. I think I've been running numbers, and this guy's writing AI algorithms. And he's like, I had to run some numbers, and I think I'm a little too ambitious, but I went to two of my friends who know this stuff better than I do, just to make sure that the math makes sense. And I'm like, and you can't tell me anymore? God damn it, Corey. What the hell? You can't tell me that and like tell me what the strategy is. So now in my own head, I'm like trying to re-engineer his strategy from what the coded language that he told me. But it has to do something with the liquidity pools in the market and how what makes sense to put up and back, and then our this is the beginning of like a crypto Ethereum based a UBI for us, because anybody who does work with us, now you have shares in our liquidity pool that like accumulates value. So you don't have to play those content games. You don't have to post 10 times a day. You could just post 1 time a day. And then you're supported by our network. You get invested on doing work that is shared with us, and you're part of our network. And then now you're a coin and a half. A coin and a half doesn't mean anything now, but over time, and we're going to be smarter on this, because we'll see the tide. What is going to be? I think Ethereum is going to be all right for 10 years, whatever. And in 10 years, Ethereum is going to be more like Bitcoin, and Bitcoin probably will start going down. And then there'll be another thing. I don't know where Tron or whatever is going to be, but the same strategy could work for anything moving forward. It's all about the tools and being able to use them in ways that work for us instead of us working for them. And we're not playing those content games.
So it is a little bit more complicated. That there's a difference between creating a social machine, like making a social project, for instance, like a social movement, requires a certain type of skills, a certain type of organizations and principles, and a certain type of magic, and when I say social project, it could be a podcast series, a novel series, it could be a group that's particularly vital, some sort of culture that is actually organic and is worthwhile and everything like that. That's a different thing. And then you have these engineering tools, or these engineering or these financial systems, and they're two different things. So the problem is, how do you so what it sounds like is that, okay, so we're getting more tools to gamify these social systems. These social systems are going to be intensified in their games, and how you get points. Social media, when it first started, we were so excited because we got likes, and it was so magical. And what do likes mean? And now that's kind of flat. It doesn't really, how many views did you get? It doesn't really strike the same way as first. But now we got liquidity pools. Now we got different schemes. We got different kind of financial instruments or mathematical instruments to create social vehicles, to create social machines of different social organizations and stuff like that. You could think of the Minds Poetry Group as a particular kind of machine of some sort, where it's okay, everybody submits one poem to this machine, and everybody submits one comment, and we can actually grow the machine, and it will start to have this life of its own. That's like the concept. The dream group that I had is a different concept. The infinite imagination, et cetera, et cetera. They all have their different concepts and theories and stuff like that. But now we have this extra.
Yeah, that's why you learn the economic tools. So then you design the engine to grow your own movement. You have to
figure out how to work into the culture of saying, okay, so the thing about this poetry group, here's a system with the tokens. We're formalizing how we all get to grow financially from making content.
That's part of the vapor test on the back end. That's what's happening on my end. I don't care what anybody else is doing. But this is something
the problem seems to be it's not so simple, because when you introduce capital, like tangible capital, into social systems, that can tend to skew the incentives and the organic kind of authenticity that's required for a culture to grow in this kind of authentic way. A lot of the interesting cultural phenomenon on the internet happens on places that have nothing to do with monetization whatsoever, that are just passion projects. That's literally people coming together for these idiosyncratic interests that just happen to spark something, like lightning in the bottle. Something happens, and then it goes viral. It takes over the internet. And it's almost decoupled from these financial incentives. In a way, I don't see how with Minds, I see this system being able to draw interest. But I can't see it it's not the solution, and I'll have to see what it actually is when they roll it out. But
no, I mean, okay. So what you're talking about is the crux of why, and it doesn't matter about minds, and in one sense, it doesn't even matter about Imaginarium. Like what you're saying, the vehicle. The front end of the vehicle doesn't matter in that sense. You could design the front end any way you want, but the back end, learning these tools and how to use them in different ways that are. The problem is blockchain is literally being used just exactly how Wall Street is being used, and that's the fucking problem. And I've been knowing this for a long time. Since I did my podcast show about it. And I remember when Dale was so happy about blockchain, and that's part of the reason why she wanted to do Imaginarium, and she was working in that space. And then she left Imaginarium because she's got a disillusion with the space, because she says everybody in the space wants to make money, buy hookers, and buy blow and fuck hookers, and like they're just basically Wall Street douchebags. And I've worked some media in that space, and there were people talking about different things, but then there's the back end of pumping up schemes, and then all these kind of like weird little games. People just do a podcast because they think this project's gonna like so they can get the coins, and then once they get enough coins, then they sell them off, and then if you're big enough your coins, and then that brings it down, and all these different.
Yeah. Seems maybe another way to rephrase that is, or just like to put it in another way, is the that the Wall Street culture lacks spirit. When you're only doing things purely just for the money, it doesn't matter what it is. Like there's like some sort of short circuit that can happen. When you're looking at things purely as how much money can this make me, rather than what is it worth doing? Is this going to bring us? Those are two different
that's the narrative. But no, that's the narrative that we're playing with and experimenting with and want to break. So we get to the work, play, plurk area that we want to be. I think all of us here wants to be in that area and not in the area that is extreme gamification or just treading water. We would like to
like a culture that's like tends to get like kind of corroded. It's like something happens where all of a sudden gamification is the telos. And that colors everything, and then bends and warps everything, and then it can like get incestuous, or it can get like way too like recursive, and it short circuits upon itself easly. But I was gonna say, I know that our space in minds. If you look at art, when what we're trying to do with art is to bring spirit into the dynamic. It's like we're working with spirit. We're working with, things that are spiritually nutritious, hopefully, that makes one feel more alive, for instance, whatever that means. And it's not just like this like hedonistic thrill of making more money. It's interesting. I was just reading, I finished Dante's...
I want to like... the Inferno?
Yeah, and one of the...
I would say just before you get there, I want to like butt in there, because like this is exactly why I'm spending so much time and so many years thinking about this, because like I view this not as a scheme to make money, but a way to shield us from what you're talking about. Because the gamifications, like almost every alternative blockchain, their whole thing is about decentralizing the attention economy and all of that. And like I've seen it on Steam, I've seen it on all these other projects. And for me right now, what I'm thinking of what I know and in the position that are and early adopters, and what is the most likely future of what you're talking about, Mac, I'm like, okay, how do I shield myself and everybody in my life raft that I can as possibly?
Right.
And those tools,
Cutting
okay,
out.
I'm understanding these tools. How do they? Yeah, how do they work in my favor? Because everybody was doing that, just doing what I did, and I thought I should get a little bit more. I thought the merit of my stuff was merit more to be in like these little more enclaves and circles, but I didn't want to play their games. I didn't want to I didn't care. Going to the Discord and talking and that kind of stuff. I just cared about working on my work and understanding the gamified culture that happens when you monetize everything.
Right.
In the
wait,
blockchain
so wait a minute. I'm now
understanding those systems and tools.
Yeah. Okay. So, if we had capital, what kind of organizations could we create in order to build upon the spirit that we're trying to make? For instance, I was thinking, say if I had like a team at the poetry group and we had some capital to play around with, and you could pay people to comment saying, okay, so what your role is you're here to make sure people feel engaged with and to comment on the poetry. So we now can incentivize you to comment on the poetry. You're going to get paid for this. This is like a paid job. Here's another role that you can do. You're going to curate the poems and you're going to create them into a literary magazine. You're going to design a magazine and you're going to put that out underneath the Minds group, and everything that we're paying people to do then gets fed back into the value of the group. Pay somebody to go find other poets on the internet to come to us to submit their work and to be part of it, right? So this is how you can get capital to actually create something much more dynamic, much more interesting, much more valuable for everybody.
Well, all those.
Hold on.
Yeah.
If you had capital, and you had all of a sudden your VR ambitions are much more realizable. You can realize a lot more of them because all of a sudden you can direct, like, say, a team of programmers to create, the world that you want to create. Well, one of the reasons why Facebook is doing so well with Quest 2 is that they curate their store and they make everybody into consumers, and then they funnel everybody in so they actually do pay money to these apps. So the apps can make money, so that it incentivizes people to make apps, and they're building, they're very, very smart in how they're building like this kind of quote unquote ecosystem kind of a thing. So one of the things that maybe that we have to do with Minds is figure out a way. It's not enough to just give a tip option. Like, there has to be like a culture of tipping. It's not enough that anybody can just post their book. There has to be a culture of book buying. Part of the way that works is to have the actual medium funneling people and incentivizing and creating those habits in the medium itself, and not just having it as like a feature, as a function. There's got to be some sort of integration at the base level to create this actual Web3 economy that's fully realized, and it isn't just like a superficial draw for this social media, this alt social media site.
That is the experiment and the challenge we have with Plus. We have a tool right now that if we use it more consciously, use it with more purpose and with more intent, that we could start to support each other steadily in this way you're saying. By now, me engaging with a Plus post and liking and commenting, and we're talking about your Plus post. Like, if I was able to read your short story, I probably would have comment of what I liked about it or what I found interesting or whatever line that made something to me. And so, like, that gives your post more value. And I was talking to, I think, Minds Gaming and Chris Duguid and somebody else, and they were saying about, Minds Gaming was saying that, when they value this, they like the engagement of like, a like doesn't count as much as a comment or a remind or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's like something I pushed early on about that. Like, oh, we gotta like kind of have them equal. Like, if you want to engage like people to really engage with the comment, then like a comment has to be incentivized larger than like, because that was the first gamification of the point system. You could just like everything, and then now you got 1,000 points at the end of the day. Like, come on. So
Yeah,
you
right.
know, every step
It's
of the
not,
way.
it's not authentic.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, it's like
so that's
authenticity.
I was going to say with this Divine Comedy / Inferno, one of the spaces in hell is reserved for people who commit simony. And I looked up what simony is, and it was this problem in the church back when Dante was writing them in the 1400s, where they would sell religious favors. And that was what simony was called, in which literally like spirituality itself was being sold. Like, so you wanted some sort of simony, SIMONY, was this problem in this church of corruption where like an archbishop or like all these different, the church is very hierarchical, there's lots of different like levels to it, but then like they would sell functions of these offices that were supposed to be for God. They were supposed to be for the spiritual, like highly sacred purpose. And you were able to buy them. You were able to buy these so-called religious favors in order to curry favor with God or in order to like affect your community in this way and that way. And it was this big problem in the church. So Dante reserved a circle in hell for simony. And I thought that was an interesting concept. To sell spiritual favors, and it really gets at the problem of corruption in the art space.
Mac,
when you introduce all this money,
I was gonna go
curry the favor of God. Curry.
That's funny. This is something weird.
It's getting late, so I do have to.
Yeah, for sure.
I do have to go pretty soon.
I was just gonna say, let's just wrap it up with this last idea, and then whatever else we want to say, and then we'll get going because we're going already pretty late too. Anyways, when you were talking about that, it gets me back to that graphic novel that Douglas Rushkoff wrote. And anyways, one of the things that he's kind of pointing to is that propaganda and magic, art, and all this kind of stuff, culture is this same like force fighting back and forth with each other. And so like what you were saying, when you curry the favor of what is supposed to be the divine and mysterious, just like now it's the ad people, they know the magic spells of how to emotionally activate people, like an artist, but they're doing it for the purpose to sell you something. They have these great productions to do advertisements, and they have these great skill sets to make things look beautiful and produce great music and do all this stuff to affect emotion from you. But their whole purpose is to sell you something. And cool. So like there's this like force. There's like the force of the arts and magic fighting against like the forces of propaganda and now towards media.
Interesting.
I guess that's like this like weird little area that he was playing with of and that's what Genesis was talking about in that car too as well.
Cool, man. I thought this was a great brainstorming session. I felt like we really were getting into that in there. Thanks for having me.
Get in there because who else is going to do it? It's going to be left up to other people that probably are not going to do it. So that's what I've always. Thanks
for the scribbling, Curry. It's going to be really interesting to look to review this tomorrow.
I gotta say, last time I uploaded one to Minds, it failed on me with the blog post.
Oh, it was too much.
Oh no, the scribble?
Which one? For Minds blogs, yeah.
Well, which one didn't upload?
I tried to upload it, and either the images are too big, or there's too many of them, or something, and it just like I couldn't get that image to upload.
You know,
So-
I was telling Mac
we'll
I was
see.
having problems too.
Yeah.
Fucking mines.
I'll
Yeah.
put them somewhere else for now.
Dude, but we could
if
build
you're
up
watching.
the Minds gaming space. And Curry, do you know anything about your little page? He said something about he was gonna like look at the code and like do something to it or something like that.
You're talking about the almighty Scrowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent him a package of all the stuff that I think. Yeah, I haven't seen anything yet, but yeah, I think it's going to kind of like get rehosted and relaunched, and I plan on adding a chapter.
I saw the
Cool.
I saw the zip file in our backend the other day, but yeah, maybe during the week, Curry will get in with Minds Gaming, and I will get you hooked up to the Glitch account, and then you can start messing around, putting files there, and then like later even mess around manipulating your own space if you want.
Cool.
That's the cool thing about the
Sweet.
Glitch thing.
I gotta go, guys.
It's up
I
to
gotta
you.
go.
Peace, Mac.
Yeah, look
Have a
up
good night.
later. I got it.
Yeah.